Well, for more on this agreement, I spoke a short time ago with Ivo Daalder. He's the former American ambassador to NATO. Do you think this ceasefire can work any better than the last one that was signed in Minsk in September?
Well, one hopes so, but the fact that they couldn't even agree on a ceasefire immediately but had to wait 2.5 days to implement it gives me some serious pause. So obviously the fighting is still continuing, and there's a major battle going on near Donetsk, around this town of Debaltseve, where many Ukrainians seem to be surrounded by separatists and other forces. The outcome of that battle really is, I think, the determinant of whether that ceasefire will be in place or not.
And as you know, often before these ceasefires come into effect, you see a pickup in fighting, and we may well see that over the next 48 hours. It's going to be, to some extent, isn't it, a test of whether President Putin is genuinely committed to this ceasefire and whether he has full control of the separatists who are operating in the area.
Yeah, he clearly has all the cards, which is why this deal is so much in favor of what he has wanted, what the separatists have wanted, and against what President Poroshenko and Ukraine have wanted. It is clearly a deal that benefits Russia. Russia has now a say over the constitutional reform process in Ukraine. Russia now has a say over how local elections will be conducted, and Russians will control the border with Ukraine, both sides, frankly, until at least the end of this year, if not much longer, because the control of that border by Ukrainians is subject to these local elections and constitutional reform. So all in all, there's a good chance that if Putin wants to end the fighting, he can now do that, but at a huge cost to Ukraine.
Everyone's being sceptical about this, and perhaps it's a little churlish to throw cold water on it before the ceasefires even come into effect. But let's talk a little bit about the options if it doesn't work. President Hollande of France has said today that if it doesn't work, there will be more sanctions. But he's talking about sanctions. He's not talking about arming Ukraine, which is, I know, something that you think would be a good idea.
Yeah, I think if the ceasefire does not take effect or immediately breaks down, then we must find ways to increase pressure on Russia. We have tried the diplomatic track, and as the president said in his press conference with Chancellor Merkel just a week ago, he said if diplomacy fails, then he will look at other options. And one of those options, he explicitly said, was sending lethal defensive weapons. I think what we would see, and I would strongly support this, is the United States and other countries providing lethal defensive weapons, the European Union ratcheting up economic sanctions as well as the United States in order to increase the cost to Mr. Putin. And it may well be that it is that threat, the threat of defensive arms, the threat of military assistance and of sanctions that has led Mr. Putin now to sign an agreement that, at least for now, he says he's interested in implementing.
Okay, Ivo Daalder, thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure.